This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we will call to order the Monterey Select Board at 9:01 a.m. on October 17th. We have all three members present here in Town Hall. And the first item of business is the Monterey School Building. So just as a little context to this, I went to the master plan survey. I don't know if any of you all saw this particular survey question.
I don't think I read that, no.
But
There was a question about it, but I don't remember what it was.
the question is, what would the best use, sorry, it seems like there's a typo on the question, but what would the best use for the vacant elementary school building? And 371 people answered, 14 people skipped the question.
So out of the 371, what do we get?
The most popular two responses by far, the number one response was 116 votes for refurbished for town use. The number two response was 110 votes for sell building / property. And
It was
those were the-
100 and how much to 100?
116 to 110, so
Yeah, so it's pretty much tied.
very similar, and then
significant difference.
the other two responses lower down that were very similar is refurbished for school use and tear down and remove. And those received a similar amount of votes as well, with 46 for refurbished for school use and 41 for tear down and remove.
I wonder if there were dollar values associated with it.
there weren't.
No,
This is what they
I'm-
saw.
No, I know there weren't here.
Yeah.
But I wonder what, if we went with that and took that question and asked the question, okay, here are some preliminary numbers for what these would cost. Please discuss, now what do you think?
Yeah.
Cause that's always, when you ask,
It's an open-ended question, it's
Right.
playing towards a different story.
Exactly,
I
and it sometimes changes your mind on whether that's a priority, right? I mean, it's reasonable.
I think that's gonna kind of be my proposal here, but just to finish up on the results, there were 48 others. I couldn't find in the survey results or the master plan what
What the other
what
was.
the other was, and I think that you could put in a comment, but I don't know where we'd probably ask the planning board for those. And then
I'll
10,
reach out to Seth and ask, because I'm talking to him anyway about the OSRP, open space revision plan, so since he's the one who collated all the survey results, they probably exist somewhere.
yeah, and there were 10 relocate building to a different site.
Again, where would that be, and once we get it there, what do we do with it?
So,
What is it gonna cost?
Better plant some money trees.
well, I also found, a
It's not as
couple,
expensive as you think to move a building, but in the
Yeah,
end,
but
you
that
still got
building-
that same building, right? Yeah, I know.
I did-
You can do anything you want as long as you got the money.
I did find on a few pages before that they had noted some differences between the survey results between people who identified themselves as year-round residents and people who identified as seasonal or part-time residents. And I don't know the numbers, but supposedly, year-round residents preferred, on the whole, sell Monterey school site, and seasonal or part-time residents or people who identified as such preferred on the whole refurbished Monterey school site.
That's fascinating and not what I would have predicted.
That being said, I mean, I feel like it's very split. You have about, if you combine refurbished for town use and school use, you get to roughly 43%. And if you combine sell and tear down, you get to 41%. So
Just be careful, like, these two, they're not statistically different, right? Like,
Well, that's what
with 6 different.
that's what I'm
yeah,
saying
exactly,
is-
yeah, it's pretty.
I think that this isn't really convincing in any direction. If we got 95% of residents said,
One thing, yeah.
do one thing, that would feel like we had a convincing mandate. This feels like, there's no convincing, or persuasive.
I
So
have
my-
a weird thought. What if we slap together a follow-up question? Oh, no, we'd never get done in time. I was gonna say, hand out a survey question at special town meeting, but we won't get good numbers. It only matters if we actually had some numbers on there. I
Yeah,
think
well-
this would cost X, but we can't just make up the number. It's gotta be a somewhat reasonable value, because I think you get a different discussion when
I
people.
think when you saw the number, someone had suggested to me, or mentioned to me, not suggested, mentioned to tear it down and make it a playground.
So I mean, I'm
There's
not,
no parking, so there's no.
By the
Yeah,
time-
but well, there's 2 spaces down on the left-hand side.
by the time you tear down the building, you have a very small lot
Right,
without any good parking. So I think we would probably sell it before then. But anyways, yes, the problem with this survey question is there are no financial ramifications listed. I spoke with Melissa last week and we have begun to try to get some numbers on different options.
when you say different options, renovating it, tearing it
I
down,
think-
selling it,
I think renovating it in place is a no-go because
I think it'd be horribly
Because-
expensive.
mostly because of the parking and the foundation and whatnot. So I think possibly the most cost-effective option and the way where the town, I mean, I think the only option of, with any financial, with any fiscal consciousness of keeping the building and using it is to move it.
It's ironic that it'd be cheaper to move it and fix it than.
Well,
to
I
leave
don't
it.
know, because I don't have numbers, but if really it would need a foundation anyway, it might be easier to put in place a new foundation at, say, the community center, and then move the building over. It would, Melissa noted, and I went over and saw for myself, there's about 3 electric and phone wires in the way. 3 times where you would have to
for
go
moving it.
under
Mhm.
electric and phone wires. But there are companies that do this kind of thing, and anyway, so we're putting together a price on that.
It's amazing that there'd be 3 in that short a space. Like, people move buildings huge distances.
Well,
But I
there's,
guess you use bigger roads or something?
well, the problem is there's a wire on the school side of the road where
Right.
the school is. Then it crosses the road at the intersection of New Marlboro and 23. And then there's a wire going into the community center property.
Right.
So I don't know how feasible it is, but my gut instinct with some rough idea of what's going on is that is actually probably the best option if we want to explore keeping the building in any way, shape or form. Because of, you put a new foundation there and then you move the building over, and moving the building is a pretty significant one-time cost, but you already have your parking, you have different things, you throw a bathroom in it, or and then you have another bathroom at that property. And another thing that I'm thinking is we have an amount of money that we set aside to build a pavilion at the community center, that it's become pretty clear the quote was really for the wood structure and the concrete, but with rising construction costs and everything is not going to build a pavilion. So potentially you solve 2 problems and you use some of that money that was set aside for the pavilion, and you add space at the community center property, and then what ultimately you do with it, I don't know. Could potentially also solve the problem of space in this building, if we relocated an office, like and I'm just throwing out ideas, and I haven't talked to the police chief. But just as an example, as a theoretical example,
One department.
housing the police department over at the old school building that's been relocated to the community center. And if you do that and you use the money that was set aside for the pavilion, potentially a lot of problems are solved with one, and it's not gonna be cheap. But putting a new, if we wanna keep it at all, putting a new foundation in, I would almost assume for certain, putting a new foundation in with no structure over it is gonna be cheaper than redoing a foundation under a raised building. And you solve the issue of parking, not entirely, but you it's gonna be a lot easier to figure out additional parking spaces at the
Depends
community
on where
center.
we site the new building, but yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's what I was
I
thinking.
would say
Where
though,
would it be? Where would it
yeah,
be?
I mean, I think there's a lot of, this is something we'd have to think about more, because we all, like, where are you gonna site it? And doing all those things without a clear picture of what you wanna actually do with the building, because the pavilion, and I'm not opposed to your
Yeah.
idea, just put it, I'm just like brainstorming. The pavilion's purpose and what it would be used for is very different from what you'd use that building renovated for. So it's not that one replaces the other to serve the same purpose, they're doing very different things. That may be fine,
Yeah.
if those are the things you wanna do, sometimes maybe it would be a better use of money, I don't know. I'm just saying it's not the same purpose, it's a completely different purpose, which is, we just have to figure out what that purpose would be, but I wanna have a clear plan of how to use the building effectively before I said, sure, let's spend a couple $100,000 to do it.
Yeah, this question is, you have to decide what your purpose for the building is, and then what would the cost of it. If you're storing stuff on the second floor, it's easier, but if you're making office space on the first, you get into more money.
Yeah,
And
so,
storing on the second, by the way, is often not a great idea. The weight, I don't know what the structural integrity of the building is, but documents weigh a ton. So you'd probably be better off trying to make good storage in the basement if you're committing it to, I mean, like, that's got moisture issues, so there's always trade-offs. But, like, they've actually built libraries where the architects didn't figure in the weight of the books and they couldn't use them effectively as a library after building the building. It had happened at UMass, actually. It's a non-trivial thing, that you never underestimate the total weight of documents, it's considerable. So,
yeah,
I would be hesitant to do that on the second story of an ancient structure.
yeah, and I think ultimately to do the project well, it's possible that you would want project managers and get into the whole, process. But it could be our due diligence to put together, to some degree, a proposal with some relevant costs, and maybe a couple different ones. This much to make it a police department, this much to make it additional community space for seniors, or just a general community space. And then propose that and, vote on that, and then the alternative is selling it. And then at that point, because I think based on this survey, there's no
Clear mandate.
there's no clear winner, but it's clear that the town, that there's a lot of people on both sides of the issue. And, I mean, the other option is we can just say, that seems like a lot of work, or that seems like it's gonna be too much money, the town doesn't have the money at this time, we're just gonna sell it. And that's just that, and this was kind of a split vote. But I thought maybe it could solve a bunch of issues, and depending on the prices we get for moving the building, I really do think the most reasonable way to keep the building and to use it would be to move it. Because that small property with no parking and with a 5-foot drop off the road, or a few, maybe it's not 5 feet, but a few foot retaining wall between it and the road, just seems like a nightmare to do anything on. Whereas we have over 10 acres at the community center, much of which is wetlands and not really good for development or anything. But, there's that big lawn out back that could probably be used for one way or another, so that's just my thought.
So how do we wanna go about putting together the cost estimates and list of possible things and cost estimates for each of them, so we can pursue this?
I think, well, Melissa and I have already started that work to some degree. I found there's a company that raises buildings so that you can build another floor underneath them, and they move buildings. So, and they'll actually do an estimate, you need to get them some stuff and answer some questions, but they'll get you an estimate. We could run into some difficulties, because really, I think the right way to do this is to get ultimately a general contractor and, put it out to bid, and have a project manager and whatnot. So they wouldn't necessarily use that moving company, but it could get us in the ballpark. I mean, is this gonna be $500,000 or 1.5 million or something else entirely? I don't know.
Yep.
I wouldn't expect it to be cheap, especially once you involve engineers and project managers and, but that would, I also think, Bill, if we do end up wanting to go that route, probably really be the right way to do it, to make sure that it's squared away. And that we have a building that we can get good use out of for years to come and not end up with a moved building that doesn't have a bathroom and doesn't, you know. So it's
Does
just
the
a thought.
schoolhouse not have a bathroom?
It does, but it's off the back, and right now the floor for some reason is removed to where it's just a dirt floor.
Okay.
So like, if you're gonna,
That's enough detail.
Yeah, that was.
I think if you're gonna move the building, one of the ways I think you can cut costs is like there's a fire escape off the side. And probably one of the ways to cut costs while moving the building is you just get rid of that, you get rid of the little piece off the back, you get rid of different things, and then it's probably much more manageable to move. That's why I talked about adding a bathroom.
Right, okay,
Um,
just for clarity. I just want us to have a clear picture of what we're committing to before we even offer it.
Well, yeah, Mark Andrews says the drawing of the property,
Mhm.
I don't know, the elevations on it. Cause they're gonna do, you know, if you're gonna do a concrete foundation, has a little bit of an impact.
And I think it would be good if we're talking about some office from town moving in, to actually ask each of the offices if that's a vision that they like.
Well, I think police, just looking at what other towns do, police kind of makes sense, because they could probably fill up the space pretty well and kind of have a spot to be based out of. It just seems like what other towns, I don't know, and you shouldn't just go on what other towns do, but.
A lot of times they're a separate building, I
Yeah.
hear you. I guess I just would like to get buy-in from whoever is running that department to make sure that's something that they think is good, cause you know, you could flip side it and say there's a lot of problems with police in a lot of places. And sometimes it's because they become too insular, and I think we don't have that situation here. You know, just looking at what just happened in Dalton. So, did you see the paper this morning?
Yeah.
So there was a cop who just got taken off the force, and we'll see what goes forward with that, for 3 high-speed chases in under 3 months, one of which ended in the death of the person he was pursuing. And, you know, he was falsifying documents about the need for why he was chasing them at high speed, and in one case, the person went over 90 miles an hour. I mean, like, it was a thing. And not that I think that our cops are gonna do that, I'm just saying, if it ain't broke, I don't wanna fix it.
Mhm.
And I don't know what situations create a climate in which your police force becomes not great actors, but the more you separate them from the community at large, the more likelihood I think you have of that kind of thing happening. I don't see it happen here. I don't think it would, not under Brian,
No.
but, you know, so I don't know, I'm not opposed.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's something to consider carefully, because the more integrated the offices are, sometimes the less of that you get.
Yeah, and I think the gist of this wouldn't be to just get the proposal and move it forward with it full steam ahead, but to come back with numbers for people, for some kind of a poll or community input hearing, where people can now, instead of just voting broadly on these categories, okay, would you rather move it to the community center for $700,000, or would you rather sell it? And real estate estimates that we're gonna get 100 to 400,000. I mean, I'm just making up
Yeah.
numbers, but, and then have some numbers.
So we can still sell the property after you do it.
You can still.
They're not mutually exclusive.
But I mean, that property's tiny, so I don't know.
I mean, I would imagine if I was one of the abutters,
Yeah, you might buy
I
it.
might buy it just to protect it. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
that
you
would be my attitude if I was the abutter,
I don't know, if you know no one else is gonna buy it, why would you spend the money?
because you don't know that no one else is gonna buy it.
I don't know, see all the issues with no parking and,
But it wouldn't matter if you have parking on your own property.
right, no, I mean, I would take the bet.
Oh, I
spend the
see.
money
Well,
because it's not
yeah.
a very desirable piece.
Don, I'm not sure if you have your hand up, but it looks like you might.
Yes, my hand is up. Good morning. There's no film of the select board. It's blank.
Oh.
Can you turn on the owl so I can see this?
Okay. Thank you, sorry about that.
Sorry about that, John.
So I think how we will move forward is just beginning the process of trying to get some figures and some proposals, and I don't really know where exactly that will take us. I'd like to do a little bit more than just get a number from this subcontractor and get a number from this subcontractor and add them all up, because it seems like that won't really point us in the right direction. But it also depends how much effort we're willing to put into this process, without knowing the outcome. I mean, the other option is always we could make kind of a ad hoc committee to deal with the schoolhouse and research it, but I'm fine kind of taking on the brunt of that work at the time being.
I think we'll get a speedier set of numbers.
Yeah,
If you're willing to take it on. I mean, at some point, if we were actually, if we choose a path, we may need an ad hoc committee to oversee it.
right, but I think when you're dealing with contractors and trying to get across someone on Justin's level or someone that understands that. There's a lot of people who have an interest in the building, but their experiences may not help us get where we need to get.
And if we're talking about moving the building, it seems like there's several pieces. There's siting and building a new foundation, actually physically moving the building, and then renovating the building to be usable.
Then you also gotta do your septic for the building. You gotta understand where you're gonna put the building is the foundation, but you gotta have the septic, so you have the stuff.
And water and everything else.
My questions would be, and I'm not going to say that I know the answers to this, but one of the ideas would be potentially behind the community center parking is you have water coming, I believe you have, water coming in, could be wrong, could be, it probably
I
might be
think
a
I know
well.
I don't know.
You have water somehow in the building,
Yeah, you do.
you have a septic, is the septic good enough for the both? I don't know.
I'm gonna guess.
Well, No, well, if you only
based
put
on-
one bathroom and it's like a half bath, you may be okay. To be honest with you, your dad can tell you more because he got the LEED certification.
Right.
And then too, he did the help Mary on figuring out if we put a bathroom, another bathroom on the community center, was the septic and the water all, was it needed?
But I know
But
that there were limitations on what they could do because of the size of the septic, so putting yet another bathroom on it in addition to the.
Well, the question is, are you still gonna do, you have to look at, there's a part of it, part C is, what are you gonna do with the community center? Are you gonna put a bathroom on there or not? If you have the one bathroom there, but you're gonna make the other bathroom have access to it, maybe you don't, I don't know.
Depends on where you site the building and
Yeah,
how
well,
close
that's
it is
it,
and a
so-
bunch of other things.
Yeah, you have to have the right. Some of those drawings that, you can start plotting.
Mark Andrews.
Right.
There's some weird.
There's, he's an architect, he knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think at the very least, what we can do is try to get some more developed, numbers, but also proposals, and then get more public input, because the master plan survey results, I'm happy they put that question on there.
Yeah,
Oh, I think it is,
See.
I think
It
it's
gives us
something,
some, yeah.
I think we need to address it, deal with it. I'm not sure what the answer is, but.
Okay, so the manual for multi-member bodies.
So these are Donna's comments?
Yes. So the first comment I see is on page 3. Obviously, if I miss one, just let me know. Monterey residents are qualified to apply for membership on any multi-member body. So Donna is right here, and we've run into this question before. People don't need to actually have any connection to Monterey to serve on any board or committee. Unless it's elected, and to run in the election, they need to be registered to vote in the town. That being said, we've typically limited appointments to.
So what she actually means is does not require appointed members of town boards and committees, because elected ones would have to.
Right,
But she
Except,
doesn't say appointed.
well, but actually we could appoint non-residents to,
an elected.
to an
position.
elected position if we had to make an appointment due to vacancy. Like, I think John
But
Levin.
then they would still be appointed.
No, but you can still, as a non-resident, you could appoint them, but they can't run for elected position.
That's what I'm saying, the
Right.
general law does not require appointed members of town boards and committees,
Right,
it's
I
not
think-
just members.
I think he's saying like if somebody quit in the ZBA right now, we could fill the vacancy
Yeah.
with a non.
But that person would be appointed, it's not that the board is always appointed.
Yeah,
the
but they
person
would
be
serve
appointed.
that term, but
Right,
then
they
you would
No,
put
they
it
would
back.
serve until the
There's
next
Just
election.
election, and then they
Right,
couldn't,
right.
they couldn't be.
And they couldn't be, unless they got registered to vote and became a voter. So my point was just an appointed person can be put in there whether they're resident or not, but not an elected one, that was all I was saying.
So we change it to all interested parties.
See, the thing is, we also do prefer Monterey residents. The general law does not require members to be a town resident unless it's statute.
I mean, I think it says this in the
Right.
next one, not registered to vote to fill seats on appointed multi-member bodies, it says we'll appoint them. They can't run for an elected office, so I think we're covered with what we said, but
Well, no, but the point being, like, when Noel asked if we could put non-residents who don't vote, don't have any connection to Monterey, other than maybe driving through, can we put them on the Conservation Commission? The law says we can't. This implies that we can't. Because it says all Monterey residents, whether registered to vote in the town or not. It's also not technically wrong, because it doesn't say,
anything about people not from town.
it doesn't say anything about people from not from town. I think we could leave it as is, because it's also been generally the preference of the select board to not appoint people not from town to multi-member bodies. So maybe it's fine to just leave it as it is. I don't know, that's a tricky one. It's not that tricky, but it's gonna take some careful wording.
For that same one we were just discussing?
I'm
mean,
slow.
I guess no, that's fine, I guess I sort of feel like it isn't wrong, it implies something else, but
It's not written, but it implies.
yeah. But the question is, do we care that it implies? If we have the preference to use people from town, that's the impression we're giving. And it really only applies to appointed people.
What we could do is just put her comment in verbatim.
While the general law does not require members of town board to be a town resident unless the statute or town requires residency, the select board prefers to appoint residents. What if we put her comment at the beginning of the second sentence? With the word while starting.
But that's a whole different thing about the difference between people who are town residents, but whether they're voters or not. So it's a little bit complicated, because all of this is there's a difference between what we can legally do and what we prefer to do. So I almost think we should just leave it on its own. The general law does not require members of town multi-member bodies to be a town resident unless the statute, town charter, we don't have a town charter, so unless the statute or town bylaw requires residency, comma, but the select board prefers to appoint residents of the town, whether voters or not, whether registered to vote in the town or not, to multi-member bodies or something like that. And you delete the first sentence is really what you do, because that first sentence is the one that's misleading.
So it would read, no, the first sentence is gone, it would read, the general law does not require members of multi-member bodies be town residents unless the statute or town bylaw requires residency, but the select board prefers to appoint residents who are registered to vote in the town to vacant elected positions.
No, all good until, but the select board prefers to appoint Monterey residents, whether registered to vote in the town or not, to multi-member bodies. And then, the select board prefers to appoint residents who are registered to vote in the town to vacant elected positions. And then,
Did you get that?
get rid of that second part of that sentence. So the whole paragraph reads, the general law does not require members of town boards and town multi-member bodies be a town resident unless the statute or town bylaw requires residency, comma, but the select board prefers to appoint Monterey residents, whether registered to vote in the town or not, to town multi-member bodies. And then the next sentence is, the select board prefers to appoint residents who are registered to vote in a town to vacant elected positions. And I think we can get rid of that part of that sentence, because
Right,
kind of already
The second
clarified.
clause, you mean, but the
Yeah.
after but?
Yeah. And I think that gets across what's legal, but also what we prefer to do pretty clearly.
Okay, I'm good with it.
That's good.
You only struggle with this same thing about every 4 months, it feels like, since the town board.
Okay, so let me check. The general law does not require members of town multi-member bodies to be a town resident unless the statute or town bylaw requires residency. But the select board prefers to appoint residents, whether registered to vote in the town or not, to town multi-member bodies. And then you said the select board prefers.
To appoint residents who are registered to vote in the town to vacant elected positions, but then you just end that sentence there. So it's what was already there, but delete the but welcomes.
But, yeah, but the second clause is gone.
And then keep the last sentence the same.
So one's about just appointed positions and one's about appointing to vacant elected positions.
So take out the but, you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, but welcomes.
Who knew such little things would be so involved?
Just a couple other small things on this page, new elected officials and appointees. Maybe it should just be new elected and appointed officials. Cause I think she was right to identify that
Right.
elected people need to deal with it too, but
And
Messages.
appointed, so yeah, okay, did you get that?
From
New, yeah,
Number two.
new elected and appointed officials.
need to. And then Donna changed within 30 days of initial appointment or election and every other year thereafter.
Which works, yep.
Must complete online ethics training.
I mean, that seems pretty straightforward, the next one.
Well, the only question would be, Melissa, are you currently doing?
Yeah, we just say, can we just say so that the town can see who has done this?
Yeah, cause it can be something that the town clerk does or the town administrator, but they don't need to know. Really.
Got it? Online training program now.
So if we're done with that section, this got messy, of course. So removal, we're in number three
Mhm.
on page 4. the way that Donna wrote this is different from what I remember KP Law advising us a little bit. I mean, maybe I'm just interpreting them differently, but I remember when we wanted to remove a conservation commissioner, we could do it, we just had to go through a rigorous hearing and notice process.
And it was for someone who just wasn't coming and wasn't answering.
But Donna's seeming to say that we can only do that if general law gives us the authority specifically, or, you know what? We don't really go around removing volunteer board members, so it's such a rare circumstance, and really, we try to avoid it. We can probably just say that in some cases, the select board has removal authority. The select board may remove members of a board or commission. I think it previously said at their discretion,
It still says that with discretion.
Yeah,
but she said
She
that it's
just
not
added that,
statutorily authorized, but it seems like that's actually the opposite. That is statute. Maybe, in cases where the select board has statutory authorization, the select board, statutory authority, the select board may remove members of a board or commission.
at their discretion.
Yeah.
Sorry, what do you want to say?
In cases where the select board has statutory authority, they may remove members of a board or commission at their discretion.
And I think that's fine, because it's not something we run up against, and in those rare cases we do, town council will be involved and will be very careful.
And she did put in after notice of hearing for that next one.
Did she?
Yeah.
Okay,
Which is, I think, what the story was with the,
with the conservation commission, and so I think we're all, she and KP Law are heading in the same direction, she just was like, don't do it unless you know specifically you can.
right.
And we probably could in that case. So,
I think you can if they're appointed, but not if they're elected, is that what it basically
well,
comes down
no,
to?
Donna seems like it's even more than just being appointed. Because I've always known we can't go around removing elected
Right.
officials. But it seems like it's more stringent than that, and there might be certain boards and committees where we appoint a conservation commissioner or something
But they
like
still
that.
have to serve out their term
I don't
if they're not showing up.
But we really don't usually deal with this, so we can probably leave it pretty, not vague, but pretty clear that only when we have the authority. So I would just accept to fill a board position for whom the board has removal authority. And then after notice and hearing, I agree with her changes in that section. So, are we fine with that for removal and attendance sections?
Yeah, I'm just looking at that next part.
So elected boards, committees, I'm trying to figure out, Melissa, did we move that around or did Donna?
She did.
Are all the changes in here basically hers at this point?
I think, yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
so. So that was just at the very last paragraph, and she moved it up, which is fine, because it's actually much more applicable than the next one.
Wait,
Which is only about the
this one
vacancy.
here?
Yes, and it actually makes sense, because the other one is about vacancy in the office of select board, which the other one's gonna be a lot more common, so it makes more sense right up top, but I believe it reads, when a vacancy occurs, the select board will advertise the position, accept applicants through the appointment or request application, which can be found here.
Website.
The board or committee in which the vacancy occurs shall within 1 month notify the select board in writing of the vacancy. After 1 week's notice, the vacancy will be filled by the remaining members, board or committee with the vacancy, and so the select board who will vote by roll call. The select board
How can it be and?
shall fill the vacancy itself if the board or committee fails to notify the select board of the vacancy within the required time period.
That's actually confusing to me.
Because I think we might not always have done it in a kosher way, but oftentimes when we had a vacancy, like on the finance committee, we did have them review the applicants first. And same thing with the library trustees, I'm thinking.
Yeah, last year, the finance committee interviewed the people who were interested.
But that's not really an and, that's us saying, we have the appointment authority, but why don't you guys
Why
tell
don't-
us what you think will work? There's nothing wrong with that, that's delegation.
I don't know. I mean, she might be on to the fact that it's actually not just the select board's role.
Well,
It
that's
seems
the
like this
question,
is
what
something-
is the and? My point is, what does and mean in this context?
Yes. I'm wondering though, if this is just statute and if we haven't been doing things in a completely.
But again, the and makes it
Well,
ambiguous
it
to
might
me.
be the case that they need to vote and then the select board needs to vote.
But I'd like
Yeah.
to know what she
Yeah.
means by and. I mean, in the end, I think Donna might be the only person who can answer
Yeah.
what she meant by putting and there. So can
we
somebody
just-
ask her?
Yeah, can we accept all the changes for now, including the moving and everything to keep it clean? And then just put in the comments, and we can delete the other comments, Melissa, if you don't mind, please. As we go forward, but put in the comments there, something like, is this the process required by law, or is it
And
just
what would the
recommended?
and imply? Like, what's the flow of process there? Because and, do they both have to appoint the person? Like, what does it mean? What would have to happen to follow that?
Mhm.
Do both groups have to vote? Do they pick and then we approve? Like, what's the process? Cause to me, that and just makes it unclear who has authority and what the flow is.
So I'm just gonna ask her what she means by and. Is this a requirement by law, meaning are both the board committee and the select board required to vote?
And then on the next page, page 5, that was just deleted because it was moved, which is the section we just dealt with.
Okay.
Figuring out the track changes thing a little bit.
I do
Page-
appreciate the little bar on the left that tells you there's something.
Okay. Quorum. In order for a board to meet or take any action, a quorum must be present. To take it. Yeah, I mean, so they can't even meet. So if you show up to your board meeting and you don't have a quorum, you just leave.
That's right.
I like the encourage instead of limit.
Well, they still can meet, and it says that later. They can just discuss, they can't make any votes.
Yes,
Right.
but they can't have minutes that say, you know, we had an extensive discussion about the school merger, but we didn't take any votes because we didn't have a quorum. I think it needs to say something like, we didn't have a quorum, so we left. Oh, I have to remember that.
The
when we
conducting a
discuss
meeting thing?
All votes taken to go into executive session, all votes, okay, fine. And then a little section thing, that's.
In which one we've pretty much been consistent on actually roll call voting. That just means like, so, you know, Susan, yes, Frank, yes, Justin, yes, that's a roll call vote.
Yes,
So-
I think the votes where we just say, I don't call each name, they're very similar to a roll call. If we have something really important to vote on, we'll say our own name, or someone will say all 3 names. But in general, that's the idea of a roll call, is you know the way that each person voted, and it wasn't just a voice.
I guess
listening.
I guess all I'm saying is I think we've been pretty good about consistently saying, I mean, if someone says it's unanimous, there's no need to list the individual names, there's only 3 people,
Yeah.
and it's only unanimous, all of them said yes, or all of them said no, right? So, I think we've been pretty good about listing who voted which way.
I didn't have any comments on 6 or 7, this minor changes
Yep.
seem fine. 8, it looks like we have some changes at the.
Wait, section 7 or section?
8.
Okay,
Um,
I guess I meant page or section, but it's section.
Oh, sorry.
So now we're on
eight,
page
section
8,
nine.
section 8,
Or
or
section
section 9.
nine.
Yep.
She added some stuff about executive session minutes, which seems fine to me.
Oh, yeah, open session minutes. Oh, like, I proved that she put that in about executive session. Yeah,
I
that's
don't have
good.
anything on page 9.
Right.
Page 10, minor change seems okay. So page 11, we get back to, different violation, the same thing. And Donna writes, if the board is elected, the select board has no authority to do much. If it can issue public reprimand and can remove the member if that's to be appointed, the member in a specific role, maybe to an ad hoc. It may be someone's a member of the elected planning board and then they're appointed to an ad hoc open space committee, and we can do that.
But it does say the SB cannot remove an elected or even appointed members from office
Yeah.
without statutory authority, so which we've already, I think, addressed in a previous section.
Yeah, so she just has it, violations of the codes of conduct outlined above may result in disciplinary action by the select board. These disciplinary actions may include where permitted by law. Fine, good. Then the only thing is that
Right.
T should be capitalized unless on termination, just to be
Consistent.
consistent.
Wow, can
And
we
then,
actually be done with this? Oh my god, except for one word.
by adhering to these standards of conduct, members of the town's
Boards and committees, or, multi-member
Multi-member
member
bodies.
bodies.
and then I'm fine with the
Yeah.
other changes.
So we've only got one question with outstanding, right? And
So
then
the outstanding question
the
is,
and on page
page
4,
4.
section 3.
and I think more than that, the and, but also,
That
is this
kind of-
required by law, and if so, I'm still a little confused, because if they don't notify us, then we fill the vacancy ourselves. But if they do notify us, but how would we know if they don't notify us? I mean, we could find out.
I mean, we could find out because the board isn't meeting because it doesn't have quorum and somebody comes to complain that their whatever wasn't done.
But when a vacancy, the one thing I don't like is if they notify us, we only have 1 week to fill the position, and maybe that's required by law, but typically we've been taking 3-4 weeks or more because we post the position.
Right.
We get applications, we have the finance committee look at them.
So we have two questions. What does and mean, and does it have to be filled within 1 week, or
Yeah.
do we have to wait a week before we begin the process?
Yeah, I'm
Would
just
that be-
curious on the whole timeline. Just so that we know what to do.
Cause I would have guessed after 1 week's notice means you can't do anything until a week's elapsed, because maybe they'll show up next time kind of thing.
But this is
Not
vacant,
that you have to do
so
it
they
within
have
a week,
to, they have to be resigned.
right, well,
Okay, so Melissa, we'll send that to Donna, please, with most of that one question, I think other than that, we're all on the same
Yep.
page, hopefully we can get that approved.
that's so close, yay. Listen, the worst part is, no matter how hard you try, the questions that are difficult, like that type of process, no matter how careful you try to be in wording it, the question's gonna come up again when something else happens, because it'll be different people sitting here that won't have had these actual discussions, and it's frustrating, but it's reality. Okay.
The town administrator evaluation form, I did want to meet with Sophia.
I wrote Melissa a note, I spent some time yesterday and last night. I have a hard time correlating it to the job description. Everything is like equal throughout this. If you look at it, it's 11 pages of filling out numbers and doing that. And historically, what I would did in my old job was you have these major categories: leadership, administrative responsibility, finance, so forth. And you would have those. So if you or one of us went to do it, we say, okay, here's the job description. Here are 3 or 4 points in that job description that you would rate them on under leadership ability. If you could add up the total number of point systems in here, you look at it, it's 11 pages of filling out stuff. And 2 is they all are equal. Like suppose, I'm not sure how you differentiate from 4 to 5. Like if, there's one in here like encourages.
Outstanding, highly effective,
Right,
proficient, is that right?
encourages staff training and development. Well, is it a 4 or is it a 5? But then if you add up all the numbers of,
It's so each thing is weighted equally.
each weighted equally, but I think.
How have you done that in the past?
Well, before is, you have like the major topic, the major headings on this. So you have to sit down and agree, okay, here are 3 or 4 things in that area that are the most important. Because typically, if they do this well, the other things will fall in.
Okay, can I ask one question?
Okay.
Are you using the job description you guys just approved, or the current job description?
Well, I was looking at for this future, I was considering the job description in the future.
Although I
So
think
you
the
should
same
be-
thing would apply, the same issue would apply.
Not necessarily, because the new one is broken out into categories like Frank is talking about, and the old one is not.
The other one, in my opinion, whether it's more
That's
task oriented.
That's the evaluation of the job description.
But I can make,
This current job description also has categories.
I
know,
didn't
I'm saying
look
you
at
should,
them.
but you should be using the current job description, not.
Well, then
To
you
look at
do
the categories,
twofold, you
But
do the,
it's the same problem, whichever job description there, because they don't, he's talking about, I think the main issue is the weighting. So like, not all parts of the job, like, what's more important, being able to file stuff or personnel management for a manager? Personnel management probably weighs more heavily than filing. I've picked ridiculous ones, but I think you get my point. So if
But
you're
if
rating
you-
everything that they do and you weight everything evenly, some things matter more than others, right? And so he's talking about how you weight these things, and when you look at the job description, are some parts of the job, do they carry more importance for that role? And I would argue typically yes, like how good you are at replacing the toilet paper in the bathroom is a little less
Yeah, but-
important than how you are at getting grants, right? Well, not if you're in there without toilet paper, admittedly.
No details here.
But
the
I
other
think you
point
get
is,
my point, and the question is,
the other
you're-
point is,
yeah.
you take the sheer number of rating,
it's a lot.
it's a lot, and 2, it's very cumbersome, you get tied up in the numbers versus providing actual feedback. How did you arrive at 4 versus 5? I don't have a problem, we have under here comments, provide examples of good or whatever. So, I'd be willing to help someone try to correlate and get it down into a reasonable, what we'd have to agree on, what's
I
reasonable.
would have liked to see what kind of process you were using where you were, cause I'm curious how they do it other places, I don't have a lot of.
Well, ours
experience
was
with
all computer,
Right.
so we had to, leadership was financial management was very important. So, that you would usually rate 2 or 3 things under each category.
But did you weight the different categories evenly, or how did you
Yeah, the
deal with
leadership,
that?
leadership was on one of the top.
For management,
Yeah,
and how did you accomplish, like, were you arithmetically in some way weighting that more heavily,
Yeah.
or just in terms of judgment?
yeah, that category might weigh more in the end in the final calculation.
So by multiplying the number you came
Well,
up with, or
Well, it
what?
was done by the computer, so you'd say under.
So you didn't know?
So leadership was this, it was like, I forget the percentage, it was
Okay.
40%
Percent,
or something like that. I don't think we have to get that complex. I just think, from my experience, when you get this, you spend more time looking at the numbers. Is it a 3, a 4, 5, or, and then you got, like what you talked about, some things should weigh more than others.
But
But I
also
think when you go to do it, though, if you were to sit down and say, okay, I need to do the town administrator's thing, you'd look, okay, refresh my memory. under leadership, here's what we have, what did we see, or what do we want to improve, or whatever, and then you would weigh those three or four things. And
So
if
it sounds like there's two separate issues. One is better coordination of the categories with the job description.
description, right,
Perhaps we need one version for this year, one version for
well,
next
we
year,
might
but
need
still,
that, that's fair,
It
is
and the
what it is.
second one is the weighting of the categories.
right.
And like I've talked about before why my issues with the Likert scale, which is that people use the scale very, it doesn't matter what you
Yeah,
write there. There are people that either do 0, 1, or 5,
Yeah,
and people
I think-
that never give 5s, right? Just
Well,
like
there
there's
is some of
professors
that.
that never give A's, like the
But when you get into it, the comments section really becomes a crucial area.
I'm not gonna disagree with you, but my experience is that once you go the route of numbers, theoretically, that should be true, but the reality is people give more weight to the number and toss the.
Well, well, that's, yeah, I know they wanna, it's natural, you wanna know what the number is.
Because
But
they're weighting the person as the number, and
I can see where you're coming from, Frank. Susan and I spent a lot of time on this last year. I'm not opposed to modifying it. We have to do it with the current job description, which doesn't, I think you can still do it with the
Yeah.
current job
You
description.
can,
but,
I have to pull,
I mean, the other question I have is, I thought one of the things with reviews was if you do the same review each year, the supervisor and the employee know what to expect. I was happy that we redid the employee evaluations because I felt like last year they were very confusing to employees and kind of lacking in certain areas. I don't really see the need to review this. I mean, I thought maybe Sophia, when she was going to review it, was like a quick review, not an overhaul. I feel like the one that we had last year, other than Frank's criticism, I felt like it was a good one. We took it mostly from what, Dave Barrington, was it, Susan, you got it from?
yeah, we just modified it from town manager,
Steve.
we basically took it and just switched it from town manager to town administrator and tweaked a few of the things, because the
Mentioned
administrator.
town charter or something.
Yeah, and or the town administrator doesn't have that duty.
I thought it was good, and I thought, I don't really see the need to change it, and I also wonder if we should change it, because it gives us the consistency of using the same form
So we
year
can see
over
any
year.
change from one year to the other.
Year over year, instead of reinventing it, and I just didn't feel it was in need of serious revision.
I'd like to hear, like, from Sophia why she felt, like,
Well, that's why I
right,
wanted to, and I
Talk
thought that it
about
was gonna be track changes, I honestly didn't, well, we got it Friday, I honestly didn't get it in enough time, or review it with enough time to really get out my thoughts to her, but I'm just, when she said she was reviewing it, I thought she was gonna work on this and we'd see a few track changes.
I know, I pulled up both and
the
was doing
other-
it side by side.
Justin, on your comment though, is that the select board's gonna change.
Mhm.
So, Scott may have saw, I may see something different than Scott saw, or the number system may, some of it's, subjective. So I just, I'm not sure what you're suggesting for the current job description, keep doing it the way you want?
Well,
But do
we
it-
had an evaluation form last year, and I feel like there's something to using the same one this year, with maybe minor changes. I wasn't really expecting an overhaul of it.
One reason to do that would be if we use the other form, unless there's a really good reason not to, we can get it done. We don't have to spend 2 months
Well, what
tweaking
you're
the
saying,
existing
there's
form.
two-part question.
And then the second part would be modifying it to match the
But-
new one for years going forward.
Okay.
And then the other question would be, Frank, I understand what you're saying about all these little numbers out of 5, and maybe it could be more qualitative, I don't know if I'm using that word correctly, but I think there's something to be said for, it's what we used last year, so there's the consistency year over year. We have it, and it was approved by the select board, which, yes, you're new, Scott was here last year, I don't think, I forget how involved Scott was in this process, but Susan and I were involved in it. And I just generally thought, it was developed for I mean, we approved it last year, I thought it was good, I thought we were gonna see minor track changes, I was a little surprised to see
I
the
was
overall.
surprised, I was surprised to see the overall.
So, and we have it, and it's been approved, and so I almost just wonder if we shouldn't use it.
We can get something on.
I have it at home.
I think it was based on her and I's discussions.
No, but I
That
still like to,
wouldn't-
I mean, I still feel like it would be
She is-
good for us to be able to talk to her.
She will be here this afternoon if you wanna swing by.
Okay.
She's on, has a union meeting
Okay.
in Barrington.
But no, I just wanted to see if we could get her online so we could all ask our
I think it
questions
was
and hear the answer at the same time.
Based on, her and I had a lot of discussions based on
How
how
it
it
worked
went
last
last year and, we looked at some other towns and that was another town that seemed cleaner, kinda like what we were doing with the department head and, this dividing and all this, total them up and divide the score by 5
Yeah,
was, and it doesn't really have, you're not really getting anything from the score, you know what I mean, like it has no.
You don't have to
there's no-
convince me about the dang numbers, we
Well,
had that discussion
well,
14
Jen,
times.
I'm very happy, and I completely see where you're coming from, I'm very happy to do a few changes to the last year's one.
That's
Instead of any item left blank will be interpreted as a score of 3 equals average, just write NA means the same thing it says here, like, what does it say here?
And this is, you're talking about last year's?
It says, I thought there was one on the new one about NA. So something about, you can put NA, and that just means,
It's a-
for whatever reason, you don't wanna rate it. And then at the end of each category, get rid of add the values and divide it and equals, and just put the numbers down, but without that computation at the end, which is the way Barrington did it, but we don't need to. And then it kind of gets rid of that issue,
I
but
will admit that I like some of the other changes, like some of the ways she worded things and is asking you to think about, I actually like,
Mhm.
but I agree, I see the point of trying to use a similar one, even if we're not getting the numbers up, to last year, just for combative purposes, like, or also to get it done.
would you be open to, Susan, then taking last year's, changing that? In particular, I'm looking at in
Having
instructions,
NA
it
and-
says
yeah, yeah.
any item left blank will be interpreted as a score of 3, which is, I know, just something that Barrington
What,
had,
is that at the top?
yeah. And just write,
Instructions, oh, right, yeah.
please,
Just
please
do
put
NA,
NA, and then you can explain briefly what that would mean. And
Sort of swapping the scoring system to the other scoring system, basically, is what you're saying.
it said if you do not have an opportunity to observe or make a determination on a particular
Put
fact,
NA, right.
put NA.
And
And
getting
then
rid of the
getting rid of the
totaling
scores,
or the
and then
averaging or whatever you wanna call it.
If you find things that you want to change and you wanna redline it and track changes, and we can just briefly discuss it next week.
I have a PDF of it, I don't have a Word document, I printed it.
I have a Word, I don't have a PDF.
I've got a Word, not a PDF.
Of last year's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also would love to hear some feedback from Frank about how he would weight the various categories. Because I have a lot of feeling about that and not a lot of experience, so I just, I think it would be useful to have some sense of what the various members consider the most, because my experience of human beings in any position is that for any particular position, some roles are more important than others, but I don't know that I have enough experience to know if my sense of a particular job, and here we're talking about the TA, but I feel like I would have these questions about any job
I think you
role.
would.
What
Because
are,
it's human behavior.
yeah, what's the most important thing here, because no person you hire for any job is going to be perfect in every
No.
category, at least not real human beings I've ever known.
No.
So the question is like, yeah, I can ask them to strengthen various skills, but if I'm making a hire fire decision, I wanna make sure that I'm doing that on the basis of the mission critical roles that person has. Because I know the next person I get is going to have weaknesses I'm not familiar with, right? And that you don't know what they are until they're in the job, but they're going to have weaknesses.
Right,
So what's really the most important thing to that job role at this moment?
we didn't call them weakness, areas to work on.
Okay, right. Like strength, the opposite of strengths, whatever, but yeah.
But there's,
Right.
and that comes down with everybody.
Yeah, well, like, I'm poor at running a meeting. I'm putting it right out there. Please tell me you're running next year.
I second that.
I'm working on it, but I got a long way.
So,
Like me and writing.
so, well, Frank, did you wanna have input?
I don't, well, I think,
The other,
Jeff, I think you're right, that, you know, I have what you used last year, so I'll take a closer look. I haven't looked at it in a couple of weeks, so I'll take a look at it. I skimmed it.
Do you want me to send you my Word copy?
Yeah, and then if I have suggestions, then let's get it across the
So-
finish line. I'll take a look at it. We'll do that, but I think on this newer contract, we should take a look. My suggestion is we take a look, you know, here are the major categories, here's what we wanna evaluate in those areas.
and so I think maybe we were gonna have Susan just do it, but maybe Frank, you make your comments on one thing, Susan on the other.
You may not have that much, I'm not, you know.
Well, Susan's gonna really get rid of those couple things we agreed on.
Sorry, I just tried to use it and my email says it's there but won't do anything.
I can send it to,
Okay.
send it to Frank. And then Frank, if you have comments, and then we can
I'll get them out.
get it across the finish line next week.
Got that.
But I feel like because it's something Susan and I agreed upon last year, then we can start from that starting point. And also, of course, we can ask Sophia, but Susan, if you wanna make those changes with the numbers and the NA, but then if you wanna make other changes too, that's fine too, but I feel like if we start where we were last year is a good starting place. I will send that clean one to Frank from last year in Word.
So we have the evaluation of the numbers more, like what the categories for the numbers are from the new thing or from the old one? That would be the important thing to
Well, the
ask.
most important thing I thought would be that thing about if you didn't answer, it would be a 3, I think was related to the whole
Right, no, that part I
calculations.
got, so if
So
you're,
just make
if
it
you're not
NA.
sure, it's NA, not
I
free.
don't know what the difference was or not. So
Let's see,
that's
what do
up
we
to
got
you.
here? I mean, they're close, but I think it's clear, for me, this makes it more clear, like, the old one said, excellent, almost always exceeds the performance
I
standard.
see.
5 here is the administrator's work performance significantly exceed established job standards with exceptional quality, quantity, and timeliness of work.
Yeah.
It gives a little more clarity to what you should rate a 5.
Mhm.
And I think that's good, because I personally always struggle with 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5. Like, if it's 1, I know what to do.
Yeah. So if you wanna use that rating system, that's fine by me, and
Okay.
then just with the difference with the NA, and then we're not adding up and dividing at the end of each section. And then Frank will also take a look, and Susan will take a look. I spent quite a bit on it last year, and I feel like I was happy with how it came out, so I also agree with the consistency.
On the new contract or a new job description, are you fine with looking at it, doing it differently or?
Yeah, and maybe it would be worth doing it, towards the beginning of the year, that way you know in advance what, everyone knows what the evaluation will be.
Mhm,
But the evaluation will be till next November, December,
mhm.
I mean.
Yeah,
13
no,
months.
I think that's a good idea, let's get the form out of the way earlier on while it's still clear in our minds.
But for now, I think it'd be nice if we could wrap this up next week, because we're talking about
Yep.
reviewing November to December.
Right, I agree.
So, and I will also make a point of coming in to talk to Sophia to maybe get feedback on that.
So
And if you have, like, how are we gonna do this? So Frank, you're gonna look at waiting, but only for next year or for this year too?
No, I'll take a look at what it changes and then
And then we'll both
I'll
come
send
back.
them out to Melissa so she gets them.
Okay, and then I'll do mine to Melissa too, and then we can have a combined thing.
Okay.
And if you have any thoughts on how you want that, we can talk about it too.
the human resources director.
We'll have it done today.
Yeah, I did get a reference to an organization in Barrington. Which does a variety of things. And
So it's an organization that has HR staff or something, or
Yeah.
it uses HR
They
directors,
do.
they have extra time? or-
apparently they offer bookkeeping, accounting, payroll, human resources, operations, employee training. But they do, as far as human resources, they do things like recruiting and hiring, handbooks, policy writing, salary review, personnel records management, employee benefits. So I think some of the things that we might be looking for, and I spoke briefly on the phone with someone from Organization Inc. yesterday about whether they'd be interested in submitting a proposal. They do a lot of work with nonprofits, it sounds like.
We're a nonprofit.
What's that?
We're a nonprofit.
I was gonna say,
Uh-huh.
we're kind of in the third category, we're neither
We're municipal.
yeah, we're municipal.
And I wanna say they had done some, they haven't done a lot of municipal work. But I think that he mentioned that they had done something and maybe they didn't do any. It's definitely not a situation, like when we look for town council, we find all these town councils that do town council, and they're very used to working with municipalities. It's not like that. But he said that if we got him some job description, or like I mentioned that we were coming up with a job description, he could potentially put together a proposal. And I feel like it would be a good starting place just to see what's out there. Because I don't really know at all what we're looking at money-wise, or what hours would look like. It sounded from him like if we needed help with policy, human resources policy one week, they could help with that if we needed a few hours there. If we didn't need any hours the next week, they didn't need any hours from us. And then if the next week there was an interpersonal conflict, they could help handle that. And then if the next week we're doing employee reviews or something, they could help with that. So I just,
So
They have a buffet.
well,
But it
What's
does
the name of the
sound,
company?
Organization Inc.
it does
And
sound
their
as though the first thing we need to go forward with that path would be a clear job description and a sense of the number of hours we require in a unit of time. Because, maybe it's variable, maybe it's a weekly number, but maybe that's not really a realistic assessment. Maybe the weekly number is really a yearly number that we divided by, but it's uneven. But we need some sense of how many hours of work we would be contracting for, like how big is that job? Those are the two things that seem important if we're asking them to give us some type of, can you do this?
Well, I just think it would be worth, sending over a job description and seeing what they come back with, because I don't know if it's gonna be $30 an hour or 200.
I'm agreeing with you, but I think to ask them for that, they have to know what the job is and how many hours we're expecting.
Through my STAM thing, I also have a list of 9 that do have municipal.
Oh, do they?
experience, yes.
Yeah, I reached out,
Town administrators.
Okay.
I reached out to the MMA, and they have and I shared the email with Melissa. I couldn't get anybody to pick up the phone, but they did respond to email. They have on their server possible consultants, and Melissa has access to that.
That's really
People
good
you
news.
could use.
That's really good news.
So
We'll finish it.
that, yesterday and today I exchanged emails with Melissa about it, because they just got back to me
All that
about it.
stuff.
The one town guy I met, he's no longer associated with the town. And they don't have it, they never found anybody to.
I mean,
Well,
9
so-
potential organizations that are.
Organizations or individuals.
Or individuals that work with municipalities is a pretty decent pool.
Yeah.
That's really good news.
So how are we gonna proceed? Are we going to send them a job description and look for proposals?
Well, we're gonna finish the proposed job description today, so you'll have that for next week, but, I mean, we can certainly call and just see what their hourly rates are. I mean, most of them know.
If they know
what kind of work we're-
municipalities, they're gonna know what.
I mean, we've already done the bulk of the handbooks and the policies, so I mean, anything going forward really is just gonna be minor.
Maintenance.
I do all the insurance and benefiting. This would be basically any issues that come up,
Crisis
interpersonal
conduct or
issues.
something.
And I forget what else you're listing there.
There's one other thing. Well, hiring.
Recruitment, but I
If we
mean,
needed it, if we needed it.
she's been helpful. I don't know that we need it.
Well, I'd be curious to see what they
Yeah.
offer and go from there, so
I can get some rough.
maybe if these places are used to working with municipalities, maybe it wouldn't be hard to send them the draft job description and just send us a proposal. And I don't know, I assume most are gonna be hourly rates, but, and then maybe we'll just need to see if there's a few we wanna talk to and pick what exactly we're looking for. But at this point, I do think it would be really handy to have an HR director, a firm appointed as an HR director, because we did transfer some duties to them, some really important ones, like if we get a sexual harassment complaint, it's supposed to go right to the HR director. And it would be good to have someone in that role.
Your other option is to use, remember when KP Law had a separate HR, seeing if Donna has a separate.
Well, I reached out to Brian Mazer, actually, he never got back to me. I just said, does KP Law, I also looked on KP Law's website and I couldn't really find.
Also, I'm willing to bet the cost differential would be significant.
It's just this, they're familiar with the town and.
This is a good point.
So.
Well, I think step one is to have a job description,
Mhm.
because what I don't wanna see us do is get into the, when we put out the IT proposals, they were so different from each other.
Mhm.
It was like apples and oranges and very hard to really get a handle on it.
Mhm.
I feel like we'll save ourselves time in the long run. We have a clear picture of what we want, and then we ask them what that would cost. We're gonna get back estimates that are more applicable.
Would you be, I would be in favor of, once the draft job description is drafted today, I would be in favor of Melissa just sending that to these 9 or 10 recommendations and then just seeing what proposals we get.
I'm good with that, cause I feel like Sophia and Melissa together have a pretty good picture of what the need is.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't have a problem with it, we need to keep it moving forward.
yeah,
Cause, something might change, but it's not gonna be drastic.
Yeah. So that, I think that's really good news, that there's a lot of referrals, and then, if we have that job description sent to them, then they should have a good sense, and I don't know if you could even word it as more, you're looking for it's probably gonna be drafted as a job description, I assume, but could we take those duties and just send them and say, we're looking for a proposal for services, or whatever the terminology is? That would be good, that's good news.
on a related but different topic, Frank was gonna talk to Sophia about contracting with us for those two reviews.
She told me she wasn't opposed to it, but
Okay,
I think the Great Barrington was supposed to vote on it last night, but her job was not locked in, I think was that
It was
right?
supposed to be last night. Yeah.
Supposed to be last night, they would do it.
so we might get more.
But she envisioned there'd be a transition, she would need to get caught up, and she didn't know what the scale of work would be. She had a sense, but, she didn't say no and she didn't say yes, I'll put it that way.
Okay,
Yeah, but she was, they were supposed to vote last night, and there may be requests, something might change, so.
Is this your pile, Susan, I think?
yes,
Okay, I was gonna steal from it. So, okay, so we're gonna get some proposals. Especially if there's that many consultants, I'm not really interested in hiring an employee.
Yeah.
We had previously discussed posting the job and trying to hire an employee.
but I think this might be a
It seems
better
like a
choice,
consultant
because
is
we
the
don't,
better way to go.
because I think we'll have too few hours to warrant.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we just have to find the right consultant.
Exactly,
It's gotta be a comfort level.
and it's gotta be something that is somebody that can understand how we're functioning and work well with us, but that's always gonna be the case.
Right.
Okay, the next item of business is the lake.
So I talked to Dennis about this yesterday, and do you have any more follow-up? Okay. So essentially, as I understand it, they were meeting last night and I don't know if he sent me an update, he was gonna send me an update. They were meeting last night to finalize some issues because he wasn't clear either where they stood. But the harvesting for this year is already completed. So whatever we're talking about that has to be done is really about next year. Does that make sense?
They're meeting tonight, so-
Pardon?
They're meeting.
Oh, they're meeting tonight, sorry. So there's no action we have to take, as what I understood from the DCR letter is that they want more information about the native pondweed. And so I think they have to make a plan of how they're gonna get that, or have the biologist that works with them clarify to the state what information they already have. But whatever that is, it's gonna happen over the winter and there'll be a plan for the spring, so I don't think there's any action we have to take.
Sorry, excuse me if you mention it, the drawdown this year is going according to plan?
I believe so,
Yeah,
but
so Kim said we have the extension permit granted, so this is for the new one that combines the dash and the
Okay.
milfoil.
Because
So from my understanding, we're okay for drawdown. She was gonna attend the meeting tonight as well, just
Because-
to be clear.
usually doesn't that start October 15th?
Yes, but we've learned that the state says we cannot start until November 1st, so.
Okay, so there is a slight change.
Yes, slight change.
Okay. This little graph confused me a bit on page 5, because it seemed to think, I always thought the drawdown and took place over a few weeks or months. And this seems to indicate that it takes 2 months for the lake to draw down.
Are we talking about this thing?
Yeah. It says it takes from mid-October to mid-December in one case. And
That might not be how long it takes, but how long it lasts.
but it says recession and then drawdown and then refill. I
Yeah,
assume-
but the drawdown may mean the level resulting from drawdown. In
I
other
thought-
words, they draw it down and it stays at that level
Yeah.
until it's allowed to begin to refill.
Yes, I thought that the recession dotted line would be, this is the time where we have lowered the level, but the water's still exiting the lake. And we haven't reached the drawdown level of like 6 feet below normal water level. This is not that scientific, right, speaking on it. I usually seem to, I don't know, this is kind of a moot point.
I guess what I was saying is there's a difference between it takes us this long to accomplish a drawdown
Yeah.
and we've drawn it down and we're holding at that level. So it's like you have a bathtub, you empty the bathtub to a certain level and you just leave it there for that long.
Yeah.
So the drawdown could be, we're leaving it at the drawdown level for this long and then we allow it to refill.
That's what I thought. I thought physically they let the water out, but I always thought it took a week, a couple weeks.
Yeah, but I think that's not what they're tracking.
Yeah.
They're tracking the general height of the lake.
I don't know.
That would be my guess, because nothing else makes sense. It doesn't take that many months to accomplish drawdown.
Yeah.
So that,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Did we, so we don't have to do anything on this now?
looks that way.
I want more time with the treasurer contract.
And
What?
one
We
thing
just
that
got
I would
it,
say, right, I just heard this morning, I think needs to be added to the day-to-day is payroll.
Well, I'm also just seeing this now, a little concerned that the day-to-day need to be more clear.
So this is from, like, the treasurer's association of what a, treasurer's functions are.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I just over like a week to review it.
Okay.
And did she offer a second year? Sorry.
Not, she's not opposed to it for next time, I think, she wants to negotiate with you a figure, so.
Well, we can also just do 1 year and, I mean, she
She's not opposed
After all
to it,
these
but-
changes, it's still not a second, I thought the whole
This is
reason.
just a 1 year.
I know, it's funny though, because I thought the whole redo of the contract was to accommodate our desire for a second year.
No,
It's not the case.
no,
and
this
there's
is,
not a
this
whole
is,
week.
this is, sorry, this
It's
is,
okay.
what's going, I have it set so that I could have the phone turned off and underwater and that thing would still go off. Because, well,
For obvious reasons.
The main hangup was I deleted for an average 7.5 hours per week. And then Sarah wants to add in, or keep in the average of 7.5 hours per week. But
Why
Like
did you
with-
wanna delete it?
because like our contract with Eric Kinshirf doesn't mention hours at all, it just says that the town
work
accountant
he's doing,
will do these duties.
Right,
So, I mean, we would have a little bit of problem if we have 39,750 budgeted for treasurer services, and not all of the duties are being
fulfilled.
completed
Mhm.
in 7.5 hours per week. So, that's why I wanted to get rid of it, we need all the duties done. Now, if you can do all the duties in 7.5 hours per week, I mean, so then the question became, what are the day-to-day functions of a treasurer? Does it mention, did she add in here anywhere to say, you know, she will complete the day-to-day functions of a treasurer? If she
Per
did,
contract? No, I think she just updated.
I think we
that.
should just throw it right in the contract, like, this is what we expect.
You mean those day-to-day functions?
Yeah, or we can add it as an addendum, but it should
Yeah,
be
that's
mentioned
just,
in the
yeah,
contract,
that would be like appendix A.
Yeah. one or the other. I'd almost rather just put it right in there, cause it's a short contract anyway, and it's a short list of duties. I do wanna review them.
Maybe a short list, but that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't sold at 7.5 hours.
No, and I don't always doubt.
Yeah.
I just feel like the town should be getting,
No, I hear
Yeah.
what you're saying, and I understand why you wanted clarity, because we need the job done, and we need to be able to budget the exact amount, right? Like, we can't, that's not too negotiable, because we don't have a way to fill in extra hours, and we need the job done, and we need to be sure the job is done. Okay, so we'll look at this next week?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try to, well, there's a couple things, like we gotta change town manager to administrator, and so board of selectmen to select board. But I'm thinking if it's all right with you all, since it's a short contract and I don't mean short as in, I don't,
It's only 2 pages.
I
think
mean
you should
short in the
probably-
sense of just actual words
Yeah.
on pages, to just throw it right in scope of services. And then we'll come back to it. The liability insurance.
I put that on the request. I talked to Melissa yesterday, Justin, I guess you got caught up with it a little bit once you met with the insurance company. Scott approached me a while back about.
I need to run to the restroom quickly, sorry, but I'm familiar with the situation, so I'll be right.
So Scott approached me that the Board of Assessors do not have the same liability insurance as others in the building.
No, it's not true.
Well,
They're missing one,
well,
and it's
then
not
they're
just the
meant-
assessors, it's the tax collector as well, anybody that performs that particular function
Mhm,
here
mhm.
could be.
So
What's the
basically
function?
under our charter, we have the Massachusetts life insurance.
Mhm.
But the difference is because we have liability insurance, like, Terry, Sue and Melissa,
Mhm.
the insurance company handles the lawyer fees and all, they take care of that. The Board of Assessors and I guess the tax collector, they're covered under the state, but they would have to go get their own lawyers and they would have to do all that. And it's a very general law that they'll pay reasonable legal fees. So that, I feel like we owe them an explanation. We're either gonna get the liability insurance or that's what's gonna be worked by.
We need clarity on
And we
why
know
they're
the
covered
clarity,
differently,
and
right?
Melissa, wrote the, insurance, and they're supposed to come back with
A quote of what it would.
would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when Justin comes back, I would actually, since the email is pretty lengthy from the Sybils about what the example that they provided and the information that we've gotten from Maya, I'd like to kind of give it all to Donna and see if she's concerned, because we also kind of felt that the bylaw, the indemnification bylaw would cover them, and it would pay for things if it was found that they, didn't.
If they weren't malfeasant.
Right. So I would kind of like to give Donna all the information and see what she says, because the difference in the policies is significant.
Okay.
It's like, what did I say, 2,600 is what we pay for
Pay
the
now,
current
but I think
liability.
it's 7,100 or
And
7,200.
then the new one, it's just an estimate, I haven't actually gotten the full quote.
So
It's
just the tax
7,000.
collector and the assessor would.
No, it
fund
would be all of
for
us now, so we would have to get rid of our current liability policy, and we would have to buy this new one, which would cover
But
everybody.
why is it so much more to include those two?
Well, it'd be 3 if you're
No,
doing the tax.
everybody is covered under the general liability right now.
Okay.
Okay, it's for the specific, and I don't have the email with me right now, but I'll show it to you in my office. It's, what did I say, there was a town where some assessors went out and.
Well, they cooked the books for short, so they got sued.
Right, they were deeming properties as non-taxable when they shouldn't have been, and it was found that they were doing it,
Collusively.
right.
Yeah.
And that
With
they should have known
intent.
that,
But,
right?
the other side of those individuals were corrupt. The other side is someone could pursue these thing, and they
When it
would be,
wasn't the case.
and they would have to get their own legal counsel, and then you would go, the way I understand it, you would have to go to the state and say, I want to be reimbursed because we're under the Massachusetts general.
So I don't think you go to the state, I think you would go to the select board and see if they were gonna pay for
The way I understood it, because we have a bylaw, the Massachusetts liability, where it's $1 million.
Right, no, we accepted mass general law to have an indemnification policy.
Right.
So that's what I was just saying when you were in the restroom, is that I'd like to give all of that information that I read to you the other day, along with our current bylaw and the example that the Sybils gave to Donna, just to see what she weighs in.
Yeah, that's a good point, get a
Yeah.
outside opinion.
That would be good. And
We owe them an answer.
Yes,
we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'd be, because Donald has a lot of experience, what are other towns doing? Are they in the same boat, not covering the Board of Assessors or their tax collector?
But I also wanna understand why the jump to cover those other.
Well, it
parts would be
seems
so
astronomical, I don't know.
probably because all the time, hopefully not in well-run towns,
Right.
oh my goodness. All the, what?
Oh, okay. I'm like looking at Sandersville,
I
I'm
thought
like
you
looking,
said
what?
Santa, I was
I was
like.
What are you looking at?
I'm like, there's Sandersville that way. I see like that.
in well-run towns, or when the assessor's department is functioning well, they do everything right, but in a lot of towns, assessors departments get really behind and they don't go to new buildings, and they don't do things properly, and mistakes happen, and if you think about it, it affects people's taxes, which is a lot of money,
That's a lot.
or if
Well,
tax
it could be,
collectors.
but I
In
heard
some
there's a
towns,
story,
uncollected
New
taxes.
Marlboro had problems with it years ago.
Everyone, I mean, it's not,
The guy that was,
Not
it's very common that assessors and tax collectors make mistakes, or there's certain discretions allowed for how long you let uncollected taxes go uncollected. And then citizens say, well, I've been paying way too much because taxes haven't been being collected, and so then they sue and they get sued for thousands and thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. Because they argue that they've been paying too much because the tax collector and the assessor weren't doing their job properly. And I think that, if I had to guess, that's why the insurance costs quite a bit, because we're talking big money.
Because
If you get a whole group of
those
citizens
particular ones
together
are
saying
bad,
they
right?
paid way too many taxes, then, and it just happens, because there's so many so many taxable properties in town, and a lot that goes into figuring out how much they owe and then collecting that money. And there's, I think that's, if I had to guess, that's why it costs money,
Okay, that makes sense.
a bit of money, but that's just a guess.
I think asking for.
well, I mean, we can still ask for an explanation, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds, and like you said, I think we have to get that answer, because it's only fair.
Yeah, that's fair, I mean.
Who would wanna serve if you knew that you could be personally liable for
Oh,
mistakes that you
well,
guys
the
have.
tax, I wonder if the tax collector knows that.
Melissa, do you have any other items? I did a couple unanticipated business. The moderator has some minor questions about the town meeting, so I was gonna get together some questions and just forward them to town council, but it's all to do with the school merger vote. Apparently, someone has said that Egremont might be delaying releasing their results till Monday.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
gonna
know
happen.
how they would do it.
I don't know how they can do it officially,
I
but
don't know
my
if they.
God,
I
all
don't-
it takes is one
I don't
reporter
know if
sitting
they
in
can
there.
legally do it, because usually when we vote during town meeting, the results are released
In town meeting.
during town meeting, before we adjourn town meeting. It's
But,
not.
I mean, like, yeah, that's an interesting question, they could not release them during town meeting, but all it takes is one reporter being in there, even if you don't formally
I don't know,
announce it.
and yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know,
It'll be interesting.
but so then, and other towns have thrown around the idea of holding off releasing results till later in the night, like if we vote early. So anyways, I was thinking of forwarding those questions to town council. And then I just wanna double check Melissa, with Donna about the ballot, and just double check that that's what she recommends. Because Wes.
Didn't we already do that?
Well, no, we took the advice of KP Law that they gave to West Stockbridge.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see
Let me
any,
just send it to her.
I saw
Yeah.
the form, it seems really smart to me.
It does, I just wanna double check,
Double
this
check,
different town councils had said different things. And the only reason I don't really love that is the warrant article, but we're not voting on the article, we're voting on a motion which has come up before, which I'm not really worried about, but I don't wanna make it too specific where we then have problems. Like,
Especially if there were, we can't change it on the floor for this one, right? It has to be as it stands, as I recall.
yes, but, okay, when it came up with the electronic voting, if we wanted to show the motion up on the screen, or the warrant article up on the screen each time we're voting on it, Donna pointed out, you're not voting on the article, you're voting on a motion on the article. In Monterey, it's done a little bit differently, but I just don't want, I just want it to run it by town council and just double check this is what she recommends, so that we don't end up in any.
Fine.
I mean, I assume if KP Law recommended it, they're the biggest municipal law firm in the state,
Should be okay.
that they're right, but, you know, it's worth. I
It's
think-
worth running it by her, I don't know if you saw, did you see it, Frank?
No, I didn't.
That just basically they recommended that the article, that since it has to be a paper ballot,
Mhm.
it's a piece of paper. In the past, we've sometimes done like a yes, no thing and you
Yeah,
tear it
right,
off, and
right.
this is actually a piece of paper that has the warrant article on it,
Uh-huh.
and then yes, no, that you circle at the bottom, and you put the whole thing in, and then there's a paper record of exactly what those yes, nos
Oh, okay.
are associated with.
Yeah, it looks like that.
Oh, okay.
And you'll just circle one at the bottom,
Okay.
sorry.
that's
Every
all
time
right.
I hit it, it keeps
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's,
I like the 52 point type.
it seems good,
Yes,
but
yes, no.
I don't wanna
It's
run,
actually 72.
I don't wanna run into anything because it says something like to see if the town will vote at the top or anything
Right.
weird.
Okay, anything else?
Oh, yes, so. Melissa alerted us to on Friday,
Mhm.
the MPL, the municipal purpose loan,
Oh, right.
which I'm just confused about, and I guess we're gonna wait on an answer from Sarah to really put this to bed. But the municipal purpose loan sheet still shows the $353 roughly $1,000 of the unissued balance on the library loan, even after the other corrections were made. And we specifically brought to special town meeting, Article 10, to rescind the remaining unissued amount of that loan. And look, I don't know if it affects it at all, but it seems like we went through the steps to I thought
So why is it?
the purpose was to remove that from the sheet. So anyways, I guess we just have to figure out what's going on, and then if we didn't get it this year, do we have to vote again to?
No, that was to take it off of our books because it's still, the permission was out there to borrow that money. and
Yeah.
the
But now
library
it's
couldn't-
not, cause we did vote for it.
Right, but it's a mistake on that sheet by the bank, but
Okay.
it's not, we're not borrowing that money.
And we don't have permission to borrow it anymore.
Right, and we rescinded it because, the library could have come and said, hey, we wanna put a
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
I just wonder like a credit score, and I bet it's a negligible difference, it's a few $100,000 that we ended up not borrowing, but I wonder if they look at it and go, okay, they were authorized to borrow whatever it was, 2.1 million, and they only borrowed 1.8. And like a credit score, there's different things about too high of utilization or too low. And yes, it's not like we're borrowing extra, we're not borrowing anything more or less than we need to borrow. But I thought the purpose was to remove it from that sheet, and I just wanna see, can we now remove it? And was that just a oversight? Or does it still live on there forever, or what exactly did we vote on? And what's the deal? Cause I thought that we had voted to dig, and I thought that by making that vote, it would get taken off of the municipal purpose loan sheet. That's my only two things.
Okay.
The only other thing, we're gonna meet with Roger about the multiple factor authorization.
Yeah.
So.
And then you're going to get, apples to apples
we're-
proposals from
yeah,
John Shannon and Whaley.
Yeah, we're gonna, I can't remember which Wednesday, Thursday, yeah, cause I got company through Thursday morning. Yeah, so we're gonna start working on that. I did some research on it and sent, we'll start getting the plan together.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can we still, I mean, even if there was something that we weren't sure if we still wanted, like, we could ask Whaley and John Shannon to throw in, I think we want Office 365, but let's say we didn't know. Can you give us a number for Office 365, and then we can make that decision down the road, but at least get
Well,
apples to apples.
I think there's one thing is Microsoft on their business package offers multiple factor stuff with it.
Mhm.
So I think we need to talk to these guys. Do you reckon, I've done a little bit of research, and then Roger knows a lot more than I do. So we'll come up with, what do you guys recommend for this?
Yeah.
Because, if you did it like Office 365 and you renewed it every year, you would have that, it's not, you have to make the initial purpose, but how do you keep it going years down the road?
And I have no way of knowing whether going with Office 365's version or going with somebody else's version is better.
I don't know, we have to
Cost
do,
effective.
we have to ask them, what do you do? Where do you, we're not the first person asking for this, so what is their experience,
But I think also at a certain point, you get close enough quotes, and we've interviewed them, we've discussed, if we need to do it again, we'll do it. But then at a certain point, you pick one, and then they start really advising us.
Yeah, well, you would say, okay, we have X amount of computers here, we need to have a multiple factor to get in, okay? What do you recommend?
Mhm.
What's that cost to maintain it? What's the renewable cost,
And do I recall correctly that our general consensus was that having both the in-house and the cloud was best practice?
I would say it's not required, but it's probably a better practice.
It's redundancy, right?
It's got the redundancy
For sure.
to control here. So it is, if you wanted to say the ultimate, but some people don't do that because they don't want to spend the money. But ultimately, I'd say it's best practice.
So, but we haven't actually made a decision to go
No,
forward with
'cause
that. I'm just asking what should be what are we asking them to do?
Well, I sent Mari a thing, before you can determine the server, these softwares have, I need a server that X amount of storage and process speed and stuff like that. So we need to get some of those specs from that, so we can say, we wanna host 2 softwares on this server, plus we want storage capabilities.
Right.
Here are what the manufacturers are recommending, provide us that detail.
Okay.
So you have to, you know.
First you have to know what you need before you can ask for
Yeah,
more.
so you can, you know, but then you always put a clause in there, what would you recommend, is there something we're missing?
Okay,
Okay.
thank you for.
No,
for
that's,
looking at that. Are
So
there,
we've got the special town meeting on Monday,
right.
and then our meeting on Tuesday.
Right.
Is there anything else that's on the upcoming agenda that I have not listed?
No, that's enough
And
for today.
so November 15th, we're having the open space meeting at the library.
Right.
That's all I got.
yeah, I mean, I think we're meeting next Tuesday. I think that's fair. Yeah, are there any comments and questions from the public out there? So August 28th minutes. So,
They
my,
never go away?
no, they will tonight, today. Melissa.
Yep.
I think that they, oh, by the way, I don't think Lucy ever got back to me about if their minutes are up.
Was it a full committee there? Cause I was asking Don about it and he said he believes there wouldn't be minutes because it wasn't an actual
Well, they posted an agenda
RSVP.
and they should have posted canceled if they didn't have a meeting on their other meetings. And there were, I believe there was a quorum of at least one subcommittee, because
I remember
didn't they
them,
call to
yeah.
order? Was there a quorum of the RSVPB? Don't quote me, but they also put an agenda and they never put canceled like they do for the other ones that are canceled. Look, it's one of those minutes where, what my proposal to do would be find their recording, which I don't think is on their website, but I think it's on community television or something. And then I would just put it on our YouTube page, and then I would put up something that says minutes of August 28th, and then just link to that recording that shows the whole meeting.
I think technically, you're not allowed to use a recording as your minutes.
I know, yeah, no, technically it's not legal, but technically, are we gonna come up with a
Well, could we
summary
just
of
say
a
that-
3-hour meeting?
Can we just say that the board attended the August 28th meeting, which could be found here, they did not deliberate and.
I think that would be a good thing.
Well-
Yeah, I think that's the key.
Well,
We didn't
what we
do
should
a
really-
vote.
What we should really do is say something very similar to that, but, you know, for the most part, or say for the vast majority of the meeting, the board did not deliberate. And then just mention that Justin asked a question one time about the use of the Mount Everett High School building after a potential merger.
I asked the question, I don't
And
remember what it was.
Susan asked a question about why the Southern Berkshire Regional School District's assessments would increase so much
Yeah, precipitously.
precipitously.
I'm sorry, why?
Why the Southern Berkshire school system assessments would increase so much.
Well, they wouldn't, because then they'd be cut off by the 2% safety valve, but why do they want to increase so much
Exactly.
before the 2% safety valve?
And they're still going up a lot, even with the safety valve.
Yeah.
I mean, but the question is, why did the safety valve was needed because the assessment was going to be so much an increase.
And I think you asked particularly if it was the per pupil cost to educate was higher in Berkshire Hills.
That was their answer.
Yeah, but that was their answer, because the teachers' salaries were higher.
That was the answer. The answer was that most of it came from a higher teacher's salary. Whether that's true or not is unclear to me. But it's fascinating to me that that assessment goes up so much, and then they're like, but there'll be a cost savings of $1 million.
Well, they say 1.5.
Yes,
So,
1.2, I thought.
I'd like to see them doing their math.
Yeah, well,
the only remaining things that we would need to add, Melissa, that I can think of is when the meeting started and ended. Which if we can find a recording, that shouldn't be hard to.
Well, I think it started at 6, but it was well after 9.
Yeah.
About 9:10, 9:20.
But if we can just do that and have that over with, and I think that's all we ever really needed to do, it's a bummer. I thought that because they were so organized that they would post minutes, but I get the sense that they have no plan on doing that. So, I didn't check Great Barrington this most recent time, but anyways, if we can find the recording and link to the recording and just say
Do
those.
we want their would Lucy give us her presentation slides?
Well, if we have the recording of it, I mean, we really are doing way more than enough to cover it all.
Yeah, I
And
think so.
I'd be surprised if any other select board is doing anything with.
I think what Melissa just sketched out does the job.
Yeah.
Typos, something.
Yeah, just, the shorter the better.
Yeah. We met, we just,
Okay, we saw we went.
Yep.
and then 10-10, do we wanna do, or do we wanna?
I didn't have your changes.
Yeah, I didn't,
Okay, then let's do it next one.
Do it next week.
that's fine by me. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
We'll vote on that,
Yeah.
yes.
and yes, let's, meeting adjourned at 10:51 AM.